Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction, wherein the universal teaching I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction, wherein the universal teaching I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction, wherein the universal teaching I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being.
Did it get fixed properly?
Just didn't tuck it in.
Take it in the back. These things were made for the mountains of China, in Japan, where it's cold, not hot, humid. So just say spontaneously what arose while you watched me put on the robe.
The Robe of Liberation.
What moved?
Patience.
Patience?
Respect.
Respect?
Way too complicated.
Joy.
Joy? Complication?
You look like setting the table for company.
Setting the table for company has to do with one of the key elements of being a priest and Dharma transmission, which is being a host.
It seemed very particular, and I just felt amazed by how particular it all seemed.
That ain't the half of it. I said before you came in, when I asked one of my teachers once, what does it mean to be a priest? He said, fabric management. Nothing.
Yeah, I had the thought, why is it necessary? Like robes in general, like thinking about.
Not necessary. But what does it call forward, though? Go ahead.
Oh, it's just along that same line. I felt it's kind of distancing for me. I don't know that much about the robe.
That's right. That's why we don't wear them.
And it just made me see you in a different light,
Right.
a more formal position.
Mm-hmm.
But there was also awe.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Connection to lineage.
Yeah, you get that really clearly.
I was thinking about all the little tiny stitches that you put in there and other people helped you.
Yeah, because you've done it.
Yeah.
I mean, you've helped people, so.
Right, yeah.
This is a 7-jo or 7-panel. Okay, so you can see the panel goes down, and there's 2 pieces to each of the 7 panels, one short, one long. There's a strip around the side and all the complex things that it takes a long, long time. There, you can't even see where any of the edges are because of the way it's origamied and then stitched. You can see the back of the stitches there. Each one of those tiny stitches, you chant. And Namoki Butsu, Namoki Butsu, Namoki. I plunge into the life of Buddha. Plunge in. It's a very, things only are sacred because we treat them that way. That's when they become sacred. Otherwise, it's just cloth.
I just had a question. I was glad you demonstrated, because when I read your piece today, I was trying to picture how you put that on your head.
I just
So
balance
like,
it up there.
Did you have to walk with it that way?
No, you sit.
Oh, good. Okay. And that.
When you walk into the Zendo, this is the envelope. My friend Vicky Austin, who's a teacher, gave me this silk, which she got in Thailand, to help me make mine. And so you carry it in a certain way, up with some reverence. You don't just, you don't put it on the floor. This is the small robe, which is called the rakasu. This is what you'd wear less formally. This is the most formal, the okesa. So this is like a little bib. I'll put that on a little bit later. This is the one that actually I sewed for my ordination. I have another one. This is my teacher, rakasu, which I should bring in. I forgot to bring it. This is the symbol for Eheiji, Dogen's temple. This is Sojiji, Keizan's temple, the two primary temples in Japan, which are like, we have two Vaticans in Soto Zen. When you give it to your teacher, there's a white piece of silk on the back. And then this was my name, my teacher's name. Beginner's Mind, presently abiding. Beginner's Mind Temple, San Francisco Zen Center. Presently abiding means the abbot gave me this. My teacher was abbess at the time, her chop. This is the bloodline that connects all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And when you get your lineage paper, you're at the end of it, your name. And then Shuke Tokudo, which means Tokudo is like ordination, Shuke means leaving home, so this is the priest ordination. Excuse me, this one, yeah, this is the priest ordination, and the date. And then there's usually a verse or something. And this is a piece that she wrote on mine. See the black line down the middle? Dirt from wearing it years and years. Realization, neither general nor particular, is effort without desire. Why would my teacher choose that for me? You scoff. Realization, neither general nor particular, is effort without desire. On my rakasu, a black one is for a priest in our lineage, a blue one is for a lay person who's taken jukai, or the precepts. When I received that one in Jukai in 1995. The verse was, "The eye of compassion watches over sentient beings. The sea of blessings is beyond measure." It's from the Lotus Sutra. The eye of compassion watches over sentient beings. The sea of blessings is beyond measure.
So when I watched you put on, I just wearing the Taka's robes, of course, I just felt this. It's very meaningful to me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect it to be, but it really, the sense of commitment and the sense of commitment to this life that you've chosen. I just really instantly put the robe on.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the one sense, no, it's not necessary, but it was extremely meaningful to me when you did it.
Yeah, and that's the dichotomy we live with. Absolutely. I mean, I generally don't wear it. It's not part of our form here. I don't want to dress up in clothing that appears to be other than my ordinary way in some ways. And yet it has an impact, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And to put it on and to sit here, and I was barely holding it together. You know, because there's something that brought up that sort of Cassie feeling. Easily weeping when you touch. And it's not sentimental or romanticized, there's just something powerful about it. It also represents the history of our lineage. When you mention lineage, this black robe with the big long sleeves, the more formal ones, sometimes the sleeves are like 3 feet long. So and look how long they are. It means you can't put your hands down. You see us walking, see me and Peg walking in walking meditation like this, shashu? That's because this is what you're wearing. You put your hands down, they disappear. In these pockets in your kimono, that's where you put your stuff. They're pockets, sort of. These big sleeves inside. This is Chinese, Kuromo, the outside robe. This is where it started, where Zen began. This, the gray one, is the kimono. And the white juban, this is like underwear. It's Japanese. It went from China to Japan. Calvin Klein. America. But this is what's on the outside. And this, on the very outside, India. This is the Buddha's robe. The original monks in Buddha's day, they were home leavers, so they didn't have any stuff. And so to make their robes, they would go to basically the junkyard or the charnel grounds, the places where they would take the bodies for them to be burned. And they would get pieces of fabric that were left from the bodies or at the dump, fabric that they could find. And they would bleach it, and then they would dye it kind of brown, ochre, in India. And then they would sew it together. And the Buddha, when looking at these patched robes, thought they looked a little bit like rice patties, later on. And so now we take perfectly good fabric and cut it up and sew it back together in a particular way. An ordinary novice training monk like me has a black robe. But once you receive Dharma transmission, then this outside robe is brown, like the original.
What do you mean Dharma transmission?
That's a hard one. In ordinary parlance, it would be when you finish your training, and the teacher basically, there's a very, very, very formal ceremony that basically says we're the same, and that means you can ordain, you can have your own students. So the Dharma is transmitted, then you can transmit it. It's passed down in that way. It's a very formal thing. And while I'm showing you fabric, and I'll show you this in a little while. This is the Zagu, or the bowing cloth. You put it down when you do your vows so that this doesn't touch the floor. So it's something you bow on. This one, interestingly, was Reb Anderson's. He gave it to Barbara Cohn when she was a teacher at the Austin Zen Center, and she passed it down to me when I was the head student, the Shuso. I have another one that I sewed when I sewed this. So vast is the robe of liberation. I'd like to ask you, since this, you saw, some of you that read the little piece, what did I title this chapter?
Embodying the teaching.
Embodying the teachings. Wearing the universal teaching. There's a way you can embody them. Wear them, excuse me. But wearing them and doing these things very precisely and as much attention as it takes to sit down and fold up like this. And it seeps into your bones. So that often what you see, what I saw in my teachers, I remember watching and listening, hearing Dharma talks, reading things, hanging out with different teachers. And I asked Zinke Roshi, Blanche Hartman, to be my teacher one day after watching her lead service in the Buddha Hall and watching her do her bows. So my impulse to ask her to be my teacher wasn't about anything she said, anything she wrote, any other particular way, other than I watched the dignity and precision with which she made a bow in this. And it was sort of stunning. So like what you're talking about, it's like, what's that? I want to be that. I want to know what it's like to be that. And whether I am ever that or not is another question. But I had an aspiration based on what was embodied, not some sort of grasping to something that was told or taught, or I had enough of that already. You know, I still have that, but this was something else. So in order for us to work a little bit tonight on embodiment, I'm going to ask you to become part of the chant. And I'm going to ask you to become some of the phrases and some of the words and speak from those places. And some of you that have done voice dialogue or internal family systems or big mind know some of what I'm talking about. You'll get the hang of it. I'm going to ask you to be certain phrases, and it's sort of like I've got the remote control, and I'm saying, okay, be that, and only that. I want you to speak just from the place I'm asking, and only that place. I know that's not all of you, and I want you to be it and sit in it for a moment, and then I'm going to ask you some questions and speak from that place. This is not philosophical. This is not theological. It's not rocket science. This is simple, simple, simple. Okay? And in this chant, you know, most of the words are not concrete things. Robe. What's the first word in the chant?
Vast.
That's next time. Vast. So I would like to speak to vastness. Would you sit as vastness? How would you sit if you were embodying vastness? Okay, nothing fancy, literal. Who am I speaking to?
Vastness.
How vast are you?
The sky.
The ocean. Forever.
Infinite.
Unending.
Air. Infinite.
Everything. Space.
Wordless.
What do you contain?
Everything.
Nothing.
What do you exclude?
Nothing.
What's outside of you?
Nothing.
And remember, you're talking about yourself, but not yourself. You're claiming. You're speaking as. And take a moment. Would vastness please stand up? Would vastness please turn around in the circle? Vastness, sit back down. As vastness, are you disturbed by this movement?
No.
What is it that you're inhibited or prohibited from doing?
Nothing.
What are you free to do?
Everything.
What's another name for you?
Freedom.
Life.
No edges.
Connection.
Ease.
Joy.
Flow.
How many ways do you show up? Do you manifest?
Every way.
Infinite.
Immeasurable.
What's the name of this one?
Eric.
And that one?
Todd.
Let that sink in. In the chant, what is said to be vast?
Robe of Liberation.
So I'd like to speak to the Robe of Liberation. Please sit as the Robe of Liberation. Let your body embodiment feel it, even if you shift just a tiny bit. Who am I speaking to?
The Robe of Liberation.
And you're said to be?
Vast.
Describe yourself to me.
Authentic.
Soft.
Warm.
Soothing.
Encompassing.
Flowing.
Present.
Endless.
Without judgment.
Ordinary.
Caring.
Holding without grip.
Dream. Possibility.
Unending.
What is it that you cover or surround?
Me.
What do you exclude or reject?
No one.
And no thing. Vast is the Robe of Liberation. And you're said to be what next? What is your form? And what way can you manifest? In this case, you're described as a field of perfection. How large is this field?
Vast.
I'd like to speak to benefaction. So sit as benefaction, please. Who am I speaking to? What's your function?
Big heart.
To be here. Benefit all being.
Embrace all.
Forgiveness.
Compassion.
Freedom.
Love.
Touch.
Non-judgmental.
Blessing.
Engaged care.
This sounds a little formal, but from whence do you arise?
No beginning.
And
No end.
yet you meet who or what?
Death.
Everything and everyone. In no particular form, but manifesting as every form, but arising from the formless. The first two lines again. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I'm going to ask you a particular question, and the answer to this question is those two lines which we'll chant again together, okay? Who are you really? Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Who is the person next to you? What are they really? Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. All of your ancestors, those that brought you here, your mother, your father, and everyone before them, that made your life possible. Who are they? Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. And when we speak about all beings, saving all beings, the Bodhisattva way, we're talking about operating as vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. So we're practicing the next line. We're practicing together, wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all beings. Do those two lines describe what you've just been chanting? Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. I'd like to speak to universal teaching. Am I speaking to now?
Universal teaching.
So you're what kind of teaching?
Universal.
And what's arising out of this universality?
Connection.
Connection.
Life as it is.
Tell me about you, universal teaching. You are universal teaching. You aren't universally teaching. You aren't teaching something that's universal. You are the embodiment of universal teaching. Describe yourself.
Accepting.
Offering.
Just this. Connected to everything.
All encompassing.
No time.
Compassion.
Everywhere at once.
Always present.
Enough.
Action.
Language everyone understands. The very core.
It may be a little awkward, but I think you can do it. Turn enough so that you can look someone in the eye. Maybe there's 3 of you, maybe there's 2, but find someone you can just look at. You don't have to like stare them down or anything, but just make eye contact. I got you here, Eric.
Oh.
Okay? Got it? Yeah, okay. Now, I'm going to ask you to repeat the line as if you're telling this person just that this is just true. Say it to each other. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all beings. If you want to know what the universal teaching looks like, there it is in front of you. You're also looking at vastness, the Robe of Liberation, in a formless field of benefaction, manifesting as these forms, laughing at each other,
That's because we're about to cry.
crying with each other. And we began to get a little feeling for one true nature, right? So just say one word to your partner, and the word is, or 2 words, like this. Oh, same. Oh, same. It's like, there I am. You don't. When do you see your face?
Every time.
Yeah. Do you ever see your face?
No.
No. Even in the mirror, it's just a reflection. It's kind of freaky. And then it's backwards.
It's not even the way it looks.
No. But when you look at someone and an expression happens, whatever the expression is, you're seeing something not personal, not ego. You're talking about connection. You're seeing what's arising. You're seeing yourself. Ultimately, over time, as all the ego, all the other ideas, all the fears start to settle, you do begin to see yourself, the one true nature. And it's very harmonizing, isn't it? Okay? You can, at ease. Now, just as yourself, say some more words about what's arising as you're taking on these teachings and embodying in this way and wearing them. What's happening? Yeah.
Liberation.
You feeling more open?
More relaxed. Peaceful.
Peaceful? Sort of relaxed?
Awareness.
Say again?
Unattached.
Unattached? Mm-hmm.
Resonance.
Resonance, yeah.
Soft.
Soft.
Anxiety.
Yes. Anxiety.
Sweetness.
Sweetness. Remember, you can hold anything. You can manifest as any particular form.
Intention.
Intention? Say more about that.
Puts me back in touch with my intention.
Oh, okay. As you embody this, there's something about your practice intention? Or your deep intention? And what? What intention?
My intention to let enough fall away that I can be that.
Be what? And what is that?
He can leave me all he wants, I won't drink.
The problem is you don't want to be too abstract or theoretical. Everything you're saying, of course, is right. But it's really important to make it personal and simple too. And you're doing fine with it. It's just interesting to play with the words. Anything else? Curious?
Tingly and sweaty palms.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
I felt a small, like a very tininess, like
A smallness.
a very tininess.
Tininess, huh?
Feels like love.
Mm-hmm. Would you hand me the little Black Spiral book? Let's pass it up. I want you to do a little experiment. This isn't something I'd planned to do. I hadn't planned to do any of this, actually. Okay, in terms of our chant, we start out realizing that we are vast. And what's vast? The Robe of Liberation. So you're vast, this Robe of Liberation, a formless field of benefaction. And in the process of wearing the universal teaching, you realize, thus, harmonizing all beings. And remember, you spoke from all those places. So let yourself sit for a moment. And I'm going to read something. And I'm reading it to that vast robe of liberation, that formless field of benefaction. I'm not reading it to your mind. To your ordinary mind that wants to understand what I'm saying. Don't worry about understanding what I'm saying. Let it just move through you. This is one translation of one of the earliest pieces in Soto Zen that we study, called the merging of difference and unity. The merging of difference and unity. The mind of the great sage of India is intimately communicated between East and West. People's faculties may be keen or dull, but in the path, there are no southern or northern ancestors. The spiritual source shines clearly in the light. Branching streams flow in the darkness. Grasping things is basically delusion. Merging with principle is still not enlightenment. Each sense and every field interact and do not interact. When interacting, they also merge. Otherwise, they remain in their own states. Forms are basically different in material and appearance. Sounds are fundamentally different in pleasant or harsh quality. Darkness is a word for merging upper and lower. Light is an expression for distinguishing pure and defiled. The four gross elements return to their own natures, like a baby taking to its mother. Fire heats, wind moves, water wets, earth is solid, eye and form, ear and sound, nose and smell, tongue and taste. Thus in all things the leaves spread from the root. The whole process must return to the source. Noble and base are only manners of speaking. Right in light there is darkness, but don't confront it as darkness. Right in darkness there is light, but don't see it as light. Light and dark are relative to one another, like forward and backward steps. All things have their function. It's a matter of use in the appropriate situation. Phenomena exist like box and cover joining. Principle accords like arrow points meeting. Hearing the words, you should understand the source. Making up standards on your own, don't make up standards on your own. If you don't understand the path as it meets your eyes, how can you know the way as you walk? Progress is not a matter of far or near. But if you are confused, mountains and rivers block the way. I humbly say to those who study the mystery, don't waste time. What's it like to hear something sort of exotic like that, sitting the way you've been sitting? Not what you understand, what is it like? Or is it just too weird?
No.
Like a stream.
Like poetry. It's like an understanding beyond words.
Yeah.
I feel like music. It reminds me of a lullaby.
About 100, I've got this wrong historically, about 100 years later, I think, maybe more, another great Zen master wrote a response to that. And that's the song of the Jewel Mirror Samadhi. The song. The song of the Jewel Mirror, so it's a song, so it's a poem about Samadhi, which is a jeweled mirror. Infinite facets that reflects the entire world. So the mind of ease and bliss and vastness, Samadhi, shows up as this facet and that facet and that facet and that one and that one and that one and that one and this one and this one and this one and this one. The song of the jeweled mirror, Samadhi, the entire world. But as you sit, and it's in knowing beyond words, or a stream, or a song, or just unnameable truth, vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teachings, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. It's a harmonization of being, a formless field that we enter. And so on the cushion, that's what we're doing. So let's go back to the beginning. We come to practice, we don't know what the heck's going on, but we hear the sound of the Han, and hearing the sound of the Han is sending out a verse, which says, great is the matter of birth and death. All is impermanent, quickly passing. Awake, awake, don't waste this life. What did that say at the end? Don't waste time. So we come realizing, uh-oh, something's happened, we realize, I better not waste this. I have to learn about practice. And then we meet a teacher, or we meet teachings that says in order to practice you've got to make the U-turn. Y-O-U, turn. And so we chant confession. All my ancient twisted karma, from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, born through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. It's like, oh, really? Okay. I thought it was bad coming in. Now I've got to look at everything. So to do that, it better be based on acceptance, and it better be based on something I can rest in, instead of my usual judgmental, critical mind. So we take refuge. I take refuge in Buddha. I take refuge in Dharma. I take refuge in Sangha. And as we take refuge, looking closely, realizing we're called to not waste time, then we want to penetrate the heart of the practice. The heart of the practice are in the 4 practice principles. which are the Four Noble Truths, which we chant as caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. A lifetime of practice, caught in the self-centered dream, holding the self-centered thoughts. Then the turn. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment. Compassion's way. And in that turn of being just this moment, compassion's way, we put it on. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all beings. So every time you chant that in this zendo, again, over and over, every morning, or whenever you are here, remember that you became each of those words. Get it in your body. You're not just chanting a chant. Claim it. But not ego. That's insanity. If you say that you're Jesus and really believe it, then they put you in the state hospital. But if you know that you're Christ, that's a different thing.
Effort without desire.
Hmm?
Effort without desire.
Effort without desire. And you were talking about intention. That's one of the reasons I was asking you. Is that when you get to this point in the practice path sequence, at least as I've unfolded it for you here, there are many ways to go on the path. What is that intention? What's that aspiration? When you move to this place, what automatically arises in you? It's not a trick question. I just wonder, what automatically arises?
To keep sitting.
To keep practicing?
The inmost desire.
What's that?
The inmost desire.
Inmost desire, which is?
The Bodhisattva vow.
The Bodhisattva vow. To save all beings. It's like you look around and go, wow, so how can I offer this? Not, oh, now I've got it. What can I offer? That's what's next. That's what will be in 3 weeks. So the Bodhisattva vows we chanted here is, beings are numberless, I vow to see them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to become it. The last vow is I vow to what? Become it. I vow to what? Become it. What's that? Become it. See how they weave together? Yeah, by dropping it. That's right. So let yourself just do a little free writing for a moment out of this. Who's writing? I don't know. Write from don't know mind.
How profound it is to be safe in someone's gaze. And vice versa. I just think that's...
What do you mean by safe?
Well, just lots of time you look, or I look, and I'm afraid of what they're seeing, or I might be judging, or, just all, instead of just realizing that, we're all just vast, robe of liberation. If you think about, if you came in contact with everyone and you just had it in your mind, a formless field of benefaction, you could hardly go wrong, really, if you could do that.
Yeah.
Just to try to remember that one thing.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, you started by saying it's such a honor or wonderful thing or whatever to feel that safety in the gaze of another.
Safe.
And then when I asked you about what that meant, you didn't describe anything about the other person. You described something about you, about what you saw and the place you came from. So sometimes we get confused because we think the safety is in the other person.
Right. That's true. When it's really about what am I projecting out there.
Yeah, it's something that, it's not that another person couldn't be scary or whatever, but that's on another level. There's something about, I just thought it was interesting how you turned and began to express something deeper, and then went to a more universal kind of thing. You know, the famous thing that Thomas Merton wrote when he had this realization that's embodied in the chant. You know that?
Yeah, I think so.
Some of you are probably familiar with it. That's okay. Thank you. It's a great Christian mystic. He was in Louisville, right? Kentucky? On the corner of, what was it?
The commercial district.
Yeah, well, and this is what he wrote, like you just wrote, this is what he wrote after, as he looked around. Then it was if I suddenly saw the secret beauty of their hearts, the depths of their hearts, where neither sin, nor desire, nor self-knowledge can reach. The core of their reality, the person that each one is in God's eyes. If only they could see themselves as they really are. If only we could see each other that way all the time. There would be no more war, no more hatred, no more cruelty, no more greed. I suppose the big problem is they would fall down and worship each other.
That's what I was trying to say.
That's what I thought.
Thank you.
That's what I thought. Anything else?
I kept coming back to this theme I've been having lately, which is the more I practice, the more I think that you develop a sense of what your intention is, but all the practice is really developing the skill to be able to remember it.
To become it.
Well, I think all the time on the cushion is literally trained to be able to catch it and remember it moment to moment, because like I wrote that the game of life is won and lost in milliseconds, and if you don't remember it, then it's gone.
One teacher described it as like a cat sitting by a mouse hole.
Kept thinking about the what's the last line is, Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to become it. Lately, whenever I've been chanting that, it's like, how can you become what you already are? Is sort of the line that is
Good question.
following.
That was Doget's question.
Right.
His entire question, his entire life. If we are Buddha nature, then why do you practice?
You let go what you're not.
Hand it back over. These are all on the wiki, by the way.
We could change it to just have a last line say, I realize it. Because I was thinking that too.
And it's not even I.
The problem is, people think realize means mental. Different than becoming. I read this the other day in our practice discussion group, just this first part of the Fukan Zazengi, which is Dogen's Zazen instruction. Once again, unusual language, but I think of it in terms of what we were just saying. The way is basically perfect and all-pervading. How could it be contingent upon practice and realization? The Dharma vehicle is free and untrammeled. What need is there for concentrated effort? Indeed, the whole body is far beyond the world's dust. Who could believe in a means to brush it clean? It's never apart from one, right where one is. What's the use of going off here and there to practice? And yet, if there is the slightest discrepancy, the way is as distant as heaven from earth. If the least like or dislike arises, the mind is lost in confusion. Suppose one gains pride of understanding and inflates one's own enlightenment, glimpsing the wisdom that runs through all things, attaining the way, clarifying the mind, raising an aspiration to escalate the very sky. One is making the initial, partial excursions about the frontiers, but is still somewhat deficient in the vital way of total emancipation. Need I mention the Buddha, who is possessed of inborn knowledge? The influence of his 6 years of upright sitting is noticeable still. Or Bodhidharma's transmission of the mind seal, the fame of his 9 years of sitting is celebrated to this day. Since this was the case with the saints of old, how can we today dispense with the negotiation of way? You should therefore cease from practice based on intellectual understanding, pursuing words and following after speech, and learn the backward step that turns your light inwardly to illuminate yourself. Body and mind of themselves will drop away, and your original face will be manifest. If you want to attain suchness, you should practice suchness without delay. That's knocked out, isn't it, Jen? Isn't that wild? So these, what all y'all said.
I just wanted to say, I'm really glad that you wore the robe. I know, I've been thinking just this whole evening whether about the distancing versus, for some reason I find it extremely comforting to look at just the look of it and you in it and it being in this room with us. It's just, I don't know what, I would want to pursue that thought because I'm not quite sure what I mean by comforting, but it's extremely so in a
I feel
way
that.
beyond just, even not with the connecting it to the verse.
Yeah.
It's its own thing as, I don't have the words, it's just.
Yeah. You know, Joko would say, when she stopped shaving her head and stopped wearing the robe, she said, you have to be really, really, really aware of what you're giving up. As at least an ordinary, regular thing to do. I was, Peg and I have been talking about this actually. I don't think it's a bad idea now and then to put them on. Even though it's not an ordinary way, and even though it brings up lots of things, especially for Catholics. You know, or those who have seen vestments worn in different ways. But there is something, there's something about it.
It's so touching, Flint. It's, there's something for me about how you offer yourself and how you embody that and the care that you took to do it, to think of it, to do it, to be it. I think there's a lot there too.
Someone was asking me about something the other day. I can't remember. I think maybe you and I were talking. And actually, Todd, if I can say something, you told me of a little story about your laptop napkin thing. After being in an intensive last year and doing some of the chores around here, which we ask you to do in this way, you know, and you went to work the next day, and it was after the integrated intensive, and say what happened.
I said, I feel like the forms of the Zendo are spilling over.
And how did it show up?
Everything else.
You told me that
So
one specific day?
I got to work, and I reached over, and I took the laptop out of the bag. And even though I didn't do it in the way I'm saying it right now,